The following is a paid commercial program. Unless otherwise identified, the guests on the program are employees of the advertiser. Opinions expressed are those of the advertiser and do not necessarily reflect the views and policies of Global News Radio 640 Toronto.
And it is a lovely Saturday morning at 11:05 and ready to go here, the PinPoint Health Show. It is a live call-in show, of course, 416-870-6400. And Dr. Lou is ready to take hold of the reins and run with it. You have any health concerns, pain problems you've been thinking about? Bring them on, 416-870-6400. Get some answers. It is info@pinpointhealth.ca. And reminding you that the podcast, long form, some great stuff on there on the Lou Down. You can search that for wherever you find your favorite podcasts as well. But as mentioned, the phone line's now open here at the radio station for you to call in, 416-870-6400. How are you, pal?
Hey, John. Good morning. How are you?
Good, man. I'm ready to go. What do you got for me today?
Yeah, the biggest thing here is I love interacting with the listeners, so I'm hoping for the calls coming in with people's health questions. As we've spoken about over the last few weeks, a lot of healthcare has been deferred, obviously, due to COVID-19, which is very unfortunate. But that doesn't mean that people's health problems and concerns have necessarily been deferred because, our bodies don't necessarily follow those rules, obviously. So I'm sure there's a lot of people out there. With what I've been doing and offering virtual assessments, I've had the pleasure to deal with a lot of people. And a consistent message that I keep hearing is that their healthcare providers are still not operating fully. They're still unable to see them. I find that I'm hearing this mainly about family doctor offices, in all honesty, more than anywhere else. But, I keep encouraging people there are alternatives, right, especially when it comes to the musculoskeletal health, the pain and injury. There are actually healthcare providers out there that are probably better equipped to deal with those concerns. As an example, PinPoint Health. Now, obviously, this is the PinPoint Health Show, and I'm gonna promote my company. But there's more than just PinPoint Health, and I've always said that. I try not to make this some type of an infomercial where, we are the be-all, end-all. There are a lot of good healthcare providers out there. I just encourage people, again, go get the care that you need. That's the premise of the show. Before we move into that, obviously, right now, there is something, this is a healthcare show, but there is something that I do want to say on my platform when it comes to the conversation around racism. And I want to relate it to healthcare for my purpose, because that's what I do. The one thing that to me still seems crazy is, I guess, because I'm someone who lives in the world of science, okay? All skin is an organ. Simple. It is just simply an organ, no different than, your heart, your liver, your kidneys, your GI system, whatever it may be. That's the way I see it. It's skin. Our bodies are designed with adaptations, meaning depending on where our ancestors or evolution may have happened, there's going to be a different adaptation. Some people have darker skin, some people have lighter skin. It is simply an adaptation to sun exposure. Depending in the evolutionary chain where ancestors came from, if they were in areas that were hotter and more sun exposure, you had darker skin. That protected you against the sun. If you were living in areas that weren't of high sun exposure, you had lighter skin. And now we have those adaptations as a result of our ancestors. It's just an organ, is what I want to say. I still can't believe that in 2020, there are still people that want to judge other individuals based on the color of their skin. It is simply an organ that has an adaptation to sun exposure. That's it, period. That is the basic science behind skin. It does not mean anything else. There is nothing else that skin means except that there is an adaptation to the level of sun that your ancestors in the evolutionary chain was applied to. So, I think having racism still in 2020 is crazy. I think the peaceful protesting is something that I'm for, because I do think I'm not for looting and burglary and all this stuff. That's crazy. I don't support that, but I definitely do support that, people that have a platform, have a voice to protest all these things. And this is simply what I wanted to say with the platform that I have, and relating it back to what I'm an expert in, which is, science and the human body. Simple. It is just an organ that has an adaptation, no different than any other organ, has adaptations depending on, again, the evolutionary chain. So we are just simply talking about an organ, and I'm laughing because when I think of it, it's still crazy. Like, you know, and it's so simple to understand to me that this should not determine how we treat human beings, because at the end of the day, the one thing that we are is we're all human beings, and all of us have different organs with different adaptations, but we are still equally human beings.
Yeah, you know, and it's funny you end on that because, you know, they talk about racism. There really only is one. We're all the same race.
That's right.
There's no difference. It's just, as you said, color. And I saw a meme up on Instagram the other day, and it was a cartoon. It wasn't a photo, but it was a cartoon of 2 bags of blood like you'd see at the Red Cross, and it said, "Pick the black one." How are you going to do that? Blood is blood.
Blood is, and that's what I mean. And the other thing is when other animals, other species look at us, they don't distinguish. It's just a human, like you're saying. We are just simply a human. The same way, you know, the average person can't identify the different stripes on every different tiger. They all just sort of look like tigers to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not honed in on every single little. We are just all humans. Skin is an organ. And different people have different skin because of adaptations to sun exposure. That's it. Let's get over, it's crazy that if there is still judgment out there, which I do believe racism exists, especially at individual levels where certain people have their preconceived notions and all these things. Yep. I think it's crazy that we judge people based on the color of their skin. I think we should very much judge everyone based on the merit of their characters.
Tom in Cambridge, hang on. I see you there, fellow. We'll get to your call coming up here. Thank you for hanging on, and your calls as well. This is a live call-in show, of course, at 12 minutes after 11 o'clock here, the Pinpoint Health Show, 416-870-6400. We're coming right back on Global News Radio.
You are listening to a paid commercial program. Unless otherwise identified, the guests on the program are employees of or otherwise represent the advertiser. The opinions expressed therein are those of the advertiser and do not necessarily reflect the views and policies of Global News Radio 640 Toronto.
You bet. On a lovely Saturday morning, shaping out to be the next 6 or 7 days. Just a beauty. It's 11:15. Yeah, the phone lines are open. Live call-in show, of course, as always. Pinpoint Health Show, 416-870-6400. We lost Tom. Tom, if you lost your connection, feel free to call back. We'll take your question for sure. But there's open lines for you as well. So bring it on. You want to email when the show is not on, by the way. info@pinpointhealth.ca is the email address, or 1-855-55 Lou. That's DRLOU, and the long form podcast series, which is shaping up and getting more awesomer every week, buddy, is the Lou Down is how that goes. What's you mentioned doctors slowly, GPs and family doctors slowly starting to creep out to clinics. It's coming up back into their offices. How's things going with you with the reopening?
Yeah, I mean, good. We were obviously, this is really the telltale sign for me that there was a big need. Like this past week was our first week back that we started back any deferred and elective type of care. So prior to June 8th, we were only doing urgent and emergency care, and any type of regular care was limited to virtual assessment. We started back, and we were actually quite busy. We have to really limit the amount of people we see. So there's a challenge there in terms of just making sure that we're doing it safe. But in terms of being busy and consistent, we were busy and consistent. And again, that to me is the sign that, well, then people really need this, right? People, It's not like we just open and so people are coming for fun. People are coming because they're living with pain and injury, and they need to figure out what's going on. In fact, I mean, with the call screener with Tom, who was on the phone, the quick blurb there says, noticing more aches and pains. What is the cause? This is a big thing that I've been hearing from patients that I've been doing assessments with, where they're simply saying, like, hey, in the last few months, I'm feeling a little bit worse in terms of the body than I typically have. What's the cause? Now, obviously, everybody has a different cause to their generalized aches and pains. But, if we sort of look at this on a whole, we have a population that has been confined to their homes, which means they're probably not moving around as much. They're not moving around as much, which also means maybe they're also not having the best diets anymore. So now all of a sudden their nutrition becomes a little bit poorer. And then it's compounded because that keeps happening. Now overlay that with the fact that we have all these problems going on in the world, and what does that do to your mental health? right? So is it really that surprising that people are feeling more aches and pains? I think not. I think I predicted this 2 months ago when this all started happening, and I was talking about this, and I said, wait and see what happens, the amount of pain, injury, all those things that people are going to sustain, because once you put this like disastrous recipe together, that's essentially one of the outcomes. One of the outcomes is that your body's going to feel worse. We are not meant to not be doing anything. We're not meant to be having poor nutrition. We're not meant to be socially isolating, right? Like, this is something that is not inherent to who we are as humans. And because it's not inherent to who we are as humans, now compound that all, you get this perfect disaster, make it even worse by the very nature that you can't seek your health care, right? Like, it's an absolute disaster. And I'm not blaming anybody. That is not the point of this, because everyone was blindsided by this. Governments responded the way governments had to respond. This is nobody's fault. I mean, there is somebody's fault wherever this virus came from. That's a conversation we got to have one day. But outside of that, anybody here in Ontario and Canada, governments did what they did. Politicians did what they needed to do. We're just trying to figure this out as we go. So I'm not here to lay blame on anybody. But at the end of the day, we are not designed for this. And because we're not designed for it, our bodies are going to feel worse. No question about it. And that's just the reality of it. So, I mean, that if someone were to say to me, why am I feeling worse right now? That's my high-level answer. My next thing is, well, I got to figure out specifically what's unique to you and do a proper assessment and diagnosis and whatever. Fine. But from a general standpoint, to me, it's not all that surprising that people are feeling worse.
416-870-6400. I want to get to Marco here before we break. Hey, Marco, good morning. How are you?
Not too bad. How are you doing, bud?
Good, pal. What's on your mind? What's your question?
I did a complete shoulder replacement 3 months ago, but I'm experiencing a lot of pain in the neck going down to the shoulder blade. I don't know what's the reason for that.
Were you able to do rehab following the replacement?
No, actually, everywhere closed down 2 days after my shoulder. That's on the 12th to the 14th. It started last week.
So I think you need to start the rehab. I mean, it's not the most ideal scenario would have been that you started shortly after your surgery, but it's not like you've gone too far. I think you should start now. The muscles of the shoulder are very interconnected with the muscles of the neck. So it's very common that type of compensation pain can happen, where when someone has a shoulder issue, they also start getting same-sided neck pain. So that's all very, I want to say normal in quotations. It's normal for what's going on, but I think really anytime you've had any joint replaced, the key is rehabilitating that area of the body, and I think that's probably what you're missing.
Okay, and one other thing, this pain gets really bad in the night. If I don't get the painkiller, I'm done for the whole night. Well,
and that's
related.
Yes, and that goes back to what I was just talking about. Our bodies. So one of the reasons people often say this to me, they say, I feel worse at night, or I feel worse early in the morning. That is the longest period of time that we spend in our lives not moving around, not doing anything. When we're not moving, our bodies stiffen up. That's just the reality of it. That's why everybody is more stiff in the morning than they are, 4 or 5 hours after waking up. That is the reality, and especially when you have something as severe as bad arthritis that led to a joint replacement, you're more likely to be sore and stiff. But again, this is all stuff that will probably start to be helped dramatically by doing the right rehab. So you're unfortunately a consequence of what's happened in terms of these things shutting down, which in all honesty, that to me would have still classified as emergency care. We would have seen a patient like you during the COVID time, because to me, that's sort of urgent that you get the rehab you need following a surgery. So I don't think everywhere closed down. I think maybe that was a perception, but that would have qualified for some emergency urgent care. But regardless of that, we can't go back in time, so we deal with the future. What you need to do now is as soon as you can, start getting in and doing the rehab that you need to do.
Appreciate the call, Marco, and your time. We have lots of room for you as well at 11:22. Just call in like Marco did. Get some answers right like that. 416-870-6400. Pinpoint Health Show, Global News Radio.
You are listening to a paid commercial program. Unless otherwise identified, the guests on the program are employees of or otherwise represent the advertiser. The opinions expressed therein are those of the advertiser and do not necessarily reflect the views and policies of Global News Radio 640 Toronto.
11:25 Pinpoint Health Show, live and here and ready for your calls as always. 416-870-6400. Reaching out through email, info@pinpointhealth.ca. And you can check out the Lou Down, the long form podcast series anytime as well. Some good stuff. Good stuff happening there. Yeah, you mentioned that people are kind of sitting around more, maybe not eating so well. Yeah, there's like big uptake in alcohol consumption. We all know about that. So the weather has turned, and it's time for people to observe the physical distancing and get out there and move, man. I mean, they just got to start doing it again, right?
Well, yeah, and I mean, just on that, I think I heard a stat this week that I think alcohol consumption is up like 400% across the province.
Wow.
In sales at the LCBO. Oh. I mean, this is what's crazy about this, right? Like we told people to stay home without any health guidelines. You know what I mean? Outside of, wear a mask and wear gloves and wash your hands, that's fine. But what about how do you stay healthy so that in the unfortunate event you catch this virus, what do you do to yourself? What can you be doing to make sure that your immune system is stronger? And, I tried, I'm going to be very honest here, I tried reaching out to a lot of government bodies to speak with them on this, to try to create a campaign about this, and I heard nothing back. And I'm calling them out on this. I did say that this was important. I think John, I've been talking about this from the very beginning. From the moment this started, I kept talking about what is it that you can do as an individual for you, your family, to keep healthy. And my suggestions were not rocket science. They were keep active as much as possible. You can be active inside your own home. Now with the nice weather, there's definitely no excuse. I see your Instagram, right? You're going for 80-kilometer bike rides. You're keeping healthy. You're eating a healthy diet. There's been some very good evidence, especially around vitamin D and what that does for your immune system. How do you get the best source of vitamin D? The sun, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, this is not crazy. And the fact that, there were no guidelines around this, to me, that's one of the problems. And I think that's where in the future there needs to be things done better. And the conversation, again, the problem I see with the world right now is we focus on whatever is sort of the in thing, okay? And what I mean by that is during this whole thing, we heard a lot about mental health because mental health is sort of this in thing. And listen, I'm all for the importance of mental health. Anybody that listens to the show knows I've been talking about it for 5 years as it relates to pain, as it relates to anything. But we've segregated it to mean just mental health and forgetting that your mind is related to your body and vice versa. Right? And so all of these things, you don't just affect your mind by cognitive behavior therapy or by thoughts and whatever. You can also affect the way your mind works by things you do with your body. There's amazing research out there that shows that moderate levels of exercise, 4 to 5 times a week, help to reduce depression, anxiety, all these things. Your nutrition matters. Like, why are we so focused on distinguishing this? And that, to me, I see as an overarching problem. And again, it's always because that's sort of the way this world works, right? Whatever is the in thing, let's focus on the in thing. Hey, I 100% do not misunderstand what I'm trying to say. Mental health is important. It's potentially the most important, but it is not mutually exclusive from your body in terms of what you do with nutrition and exercise in keeping active. And so, we've done this horrible experiment of asking people to be home with no guidelines around how do you also take care of your body, because that also is going to affect your mind, and vice versa. The way you take care of your mind will take care of your body. But the more we focus on distinguishing these two things, the further we're moving away from the truth, in my opinion. The truth is that these things need to be tackled together. If you can keep your mind and your body healthy together, that is your best chance at success in terms of staying healthy, period. And there's an enormous amount of research to suggest that on all of these fronts. And clinically, I see it every day. And you know it too, John, as you've gone through different phases in your life in terms of physical health, as have I. Mm-hmm. Is it not interesting, and I'm sure you found this as well, that when you're in your best physical health, your mental health often does better? Am I right or am I wrong?
Absolutely. You sit around too long and don't exercise, go out for a bike ride, I feel like mentally absolute crap. So you got to get out there and do it. And when you come back, it's amazing the spiritual lift it gives you, right?
Well, and it's all a simple release of hormones and things that happen. There's a euphoric feeling. There's things that happen in your body. Different hormones are released, which give you these things. So it's a natural way to do that. But I'm not saying that your thoughts don't matter. Of course. I mean, anybody that has ever listened to my show has heard me talk about the importance of pain and what the mind does to pain and how you also have to tackle the mind. I'm not sitting here saying, hey, let's forget the mental health conversation. And I keep saying that because I really want to make it clear, because, again, another phenomenon in the day and age that we live is people only hear what they want to hear. They don't hear the totality of what I'm trying to say. The totality of what I'm trying to say is it all matters. We have to target the mental and the physical, and we have to do it together, not in some type of segregation where this is what you do for this and here's what you do with that. Our mind and our body are connected. I don't know if that comes as a surprise to anybody, but if that is a surprise, that is the reality of the situation.
Take a short break here, and more of that on the way. The conversation continues. Please be part of it if you want to chime in. That's what we're here for. Live show, of course. 416-870-6400 is the way to call in. It's 11:31. We'll continue with more of the Pinpoint Health Show. This is Global News Radio.
You are listening to a paid commercial program. Unless otherwise identified, the guests on the program are employees of or otherwise represent the advertiser. The opinions expressed therein are those of the advertiser and do not necessarily reflect the views and policies of Global News Radio 640 Toronto.
11:33, right back at it. Pinpoint Health Show here, 416-870-6400. You have pain concerns, something going on with you. You're not feeling just right. That's why you want to give us a call, 416-870-6400. Even on behalf of a friend or a family member, you can call in if they're a little bashful. That is no problem. You want to carry on after the show, 1-855-55 Dr. Lou, DRLOU, and the podcast, the Lou Down. Catch that where you get your favorite podcasts. So there you go. You're covered.
Yeah, thank you. And on the front of the podcast, I really do encourage people, go check it out. There's a lot of interesting guests that I have on there. It's a longer format. There's no commercial breaks, all of these things. And a lot of these are topics that I think most people will find interesting. So check that out. The other thing with this show, John, is, we always tell people to call with their questions. But I was thinking on break before we went to break, and you mentioned that, I'm happy to talk to people about whatever. I mean, even if you disagree with me, I'm happy to have that conversation as long as it's in a respectful manner. I'm willing to hear anybody's opinion and see maybe there's something I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. But I'm always happy to have these conversations around. I think anybody that's listened to the show long enough, or if you've just started tuning in right now, you've gotten a sense of the way I see healthcare and the way I see that it should be done. If people disagree with that, I'm happy to hear those concerns as well. I mean, that's really the whole point here of evolving. We can all evolve, right? I may say something that may change your mind, and you may evolve as a person, and your thoughts may evolve, or that could happen the other way. Maybe someone says something to me that then I investigate further, and I can change my opinion. I think that's how we get better. So I wanted to throw that out there for anybody listening. I mean, even if you disagree with me, you believe something different, whatever it may be, I'm happy to have that conversation. That's why this show is here.
416-870-6400 is the way to call through and talk about exactly that. Tom, you're back. Good to have you. How are you, pal?
Not bad. I've started experiencing some pain in my shoulders from the top of the crown of the shoulder down to part of the bicep. Okay. And I can move my arm up to a certain point, and then when I try to raise, if I was doing bench pressing right now, I don't think I could do a bench press or a push-up right now. That's the pain of it right now.
Okay.
So could it be tendinosis? Could it be age?
It could be one of many different things. I mean, this is the important thing about what you asking me that, if I just threw out a diagnosis, I'd be no better than Google, right? Because anyone could type in, shoulder pain from this point to this point, and what are the possibilities? Really, I'm Google in that sense. Sure. The reality of what I try to do is really, and what I'm a proponent of, is figure out what the real problem is. It could be a lot of different things, okay? And that's why professionals matter in terms of figuring these things out. Because the minute you start thinking it's one thing, and I see this all the time for every part of the body, it's something that it's probably more than half the job I do is trying to fix people's beliefs and what they've been told by someone else or by Google or whatever, people always have a preconceived notion that they know what their problem is. And that's a big problem. Because once you believe you know what it is, then all of a sudden, let's take the example that you're confident that this is a tendinitis. Then all of a sudden you start typing in shoulder treatment for tendinitis, and you get all of these different things that pop up, and you start doing these things for it. And you do these things with nothing getting better. So now two things are happening. Number one, more time is going by without you actually doing the right thing for your shoulder. And number two, you may be taking things or doing things that may actually overall be harmful. As an example, with tendinitis, one of the things you'll hear is for NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. Well, long-term usage of those things can affect the GI system, right? So now all of a sudden you develop some type of a GI problem. That doesn't mean it has to be a serious problem. It could just be something simple. But the point I'm trying to make is if your diagnosis is not right or not confident or whatever it may be, then your treatment will go with that. And if your treatment is wrong, it's because your diagnosis was likely wrong. And if you're treating it the wrong way, you're not going to get better. And I see this all the time. Again, more than 50% of what I do when I interact with people is actually trying to change their narrative in terms of what they've either been told or told themselves or whatever it is. The big thing here is you've really got to figure out what the underlying problem is. And this is the part of over the radio to hear, you telling me I've got shoulder pain that goes from here to here. It started X amount of time ago. In my head, I've got like a Rolodex of 100 things going through my head that it could be. This is where actually getting into the individual assessment is so very important. And again, that doesn't need to be me. That could be anybody that you trust with your health that's knowledgeable in these things. But I think that's really where the goal should be, is to really get it diagnosed properly.
Well, I agree. Just trying to get in there to see somebody. I also agree, too, with your regards to opinions. Everybody's got an opinion. We all should listen to it once in a while.
Yep, yeah. I can have someone call you. You can do a virtual assessment with me, and we can definitely work towards it if you like. I'm more than happy to arrange that.
Great, thanks very much.
No problem.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate your time. And to carry on, I know we'll have your number, but 1-855-55 Dr. Lou, DRLOU is the way to go. Moving on to Cliff. Hey, Cliff, thanks for standing by. How are you this morning?
Good, gentlemen. How are you?
Good, pal. What's on your mind?
Quick question. Tendon plates in my right ankle. I broke my ankle skiing about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm actually contemplating getting them out. What do you think on that?
It's a tricky one, right? So anytime you have hardware, the advantage of stable joints, so taking your ankle, the advantage of a stable joint, and I have this question even the other way around, where someone has been recommended to fuse a joint or whatever. Here is on a high level where the pros and the cons are. The pros of limiting mobility in an area is that you'll likely limit pain, because pain is often a result of excessive mobility. On a very high level, you can get into more things where all of a sudden there's more degeneration, whatever. But in general, once you do that, you do limit some amount of pain. The con to it is that you lose mobility, right? So my question to you would become this. You've had this you've clearly adapted your life to having this because you've had it for so long. What would be your reason for wanting to get it out?
Just reason being is because I've lost a significant amount of weight.
Okay.
And when I had them put in, when it was put in, my weight was bigger than what I am now, per se, for example, right? So that was the reason being. And I do have, when I was bigger, I also had to wear orthotics for my feet and stuff like that, because I do have heel spurs and bone spurs, right? So, and I still do have, but yeah, so that was the reason being. I've lost a substantial amount of weight. I've dropped 75 pounds, right? So.
Yeah. The other challenge here, Cliff, is that you've had this for so long that it may not be as, once you have that hardware in there, then bone starts to form around it. There's scar tissue. It's a more complicated conversation. What I would say is and again, this is sort of like a very high level opinion because I'm not seeing you in general. I would tell somebody if it's not providing you with any problem, I get sort of what you're thinking in terms of, well, you're lighter, so maybe there's an advantage there. If it's not bothering you outside of that, I probably wouldn't mess with it. It would just be my initial thought. I may change my mind if I speak with you further and know something that I wasn't able to divulge here on air. But I would say in general, if it's not broken, don't fix it type of thing.
I'm not having any problems at all. So
I think maybe you maybe inherently already know the answer then.
Cliff, appreciate your time in the call. Greg, Ross, fellas, stand by. We'll get to you as we take a short break here. 416-870-6400. It is 11:42. This is the PinPoint Health Show, and it's on Global News Radio.
You are listening to a paid commercial program. Unless otherwise identified, the guests on the program are employees of or otherwise represent the advertiser. The opinions expressed therein are those of the advertiser and do not necessarily reflect the views and policies of Global News Radio 640 Toronto.
And thanks for hanging around. PinPoint Health Show. It is 11:44 on a Saturday morning. And when we're done here, get out and enjoy it, man. Get out there is the hashtag, right? Everybody going to enjoy some weather and some activity. But the phone calls, we go right back to them because they are the top priority. Greg, thanks for standing by. What's going on?
Well, thanks for taking my call. I've got some knee problems going on. I'm hoping the doctor can know what the proper terminology is. But I have bow legs, and my doctor the specialist suggested last year that they cut a wedge out of the side of my knee and fill it with either a bone from my hip or something else, so my knees would go back to being straight. And that's sort of scared the heck out of me after I seen some YouTube videos on it. So I ended up getting cortisone shots at my knees, and I'm just starting to feel my left one. Not that it hurts; it just aches almost all the time. And I'm an avid runner, and I am a bigger boy because I lift a lot of weights, but I love to run.
So I guess how long have you been bow-legged for? Your whole life, I'm assuming.
I think it's progressed. It's a lucky family trait, I guess. It's progressed as I've gotten older.
So anytime that gives me a little bit better of an idea. Typically, and again, I'd have to see x-rays, but what will happen when the degenerative process happens in the knee, once things are bone on bone, so there's this idea that once something is right bone on bone, it stops. The degenerative process actually doesn't stop. When it's bone on bone, and it will progress further. And what it does is it actually breaks down other bone and expands further. And what that does is it starts to deform joints. The best example that I can give of this is if you've ever seen older women who have had significant arthritis in their hands, and you look at their hands, their fingers will actually look crooked. And that's a result of that significant arthritis creating the bone to actually change shape because it continues to lay down more bone, and it's got to displace in order to keep that process up. The same thing actually happens in the knee, and that's one of the things that when people are sort of contemplating when is a right time to get a knee replacement, what I often tell them, especially if they're right bone on bone, is, hey, just because you're bone on bone, they think that this is the end of the line. The next stage is your joint will actually start to change, and when it changes, that creates other functional problems. So, I mean, that's maybe what's going on. Again, I don't know. I'd have to see x-rays of you in terms of putting in pieces of bone in order to space it out. I mean, I'm actually not familiar with that. I didn't think that they would do that often. But, I mean, the one thing that I could tell you is from a knee standpoint, and it's great that you like to run, but running is potentially one of the worst things you could be doing for yourself right now. In terms of the amount of pressure that's put on and the degenerative load that continues to happen. You may want to consider, and I think it's great that you're active, but you may want to consider activities that offload you, so say like the elliptical or biking. I know it's very hard for people who are avid runners to hear this, but that's just sort of the reality. The more that you keep that up, the more that process will happen. And so if you're sort of wary of doing any type of surgery, the conversation really needs to become, okay, well, what can I do to slow this down? Really what you can do to slow it down is stop running, because the more you run, the amount of pressure and degeneration that happens, there's nothing greater in terms of that will create that. That's probably one of the worst things you can do when you've got degenerative knees.
Yeah, I agree that you're 1,000% right. I've tried to limit it just to bush running where it's not the same impact, and I have taken up biking. And the reason why I started calling today, because I was out bike riding this morning, and it was just still like the ache in it was just unbelievable.
Yeah, so, I mean, there might be more going on, right? So this is where, again, assessments matter a lot because a lot of what I'm doing is assuming, right? I haven't actually taken a proper history or anything. So same thing. I can have someone call you. We can sort of investigate this further so that I can understand more. But in general, right, biking, anything that offloads the joint and keeps you active is going to be better than anything like running, which is going to really speed up that degenerative process. But maybe there's something else there that I'm not understanding. It's also possible that people have varus or valgus strains on their knee, which is either bow-legged or knock knee, the medical terms for it, just naturally due to an anomaly. And maybe that's the case with you, right? So I don't actually know, and we'd have to sort of investigate that further.
Okay.
Okay, I'll have someone
Thanks,
call you.
Greg. Appreciate that. And I'm going to leave you with a number, and you can reach out. Please do. Don't hesitate. 1-855-55-Dr. Lou, DRLOU, info@pinpointhealth.ca. Ross, just hang on for one more minute till we take our last break here, and I'll get to your call. Ross is coming up next. Pinpoint Health Show, 416-870-6400. It's 11:49. We'll get right back at it here on Global News Radio.
You are listening to a paid commercial program. Unless otherwise identified, the guests on the program are employees of or otherwise represent the advertiser. The opinions expressed therein are those of the advertiser and do not necessarily reflect the views and policies of Global News Radio 640 Toronto.
And we are right back at it. It's 11:53, few minutes to go here. And as promised, getting to Ross. Ross, thank you so much for hanging on there for a couple minutes. How are you?
Not too bad. How you doing?
Good. What's on your mind?
My daughter is ready for ACL surgery. She tore her ACL last year, and with the surgery starting next week and the week after, she's going to have ACL surgery. And I'm just wondering, the options are with a hamstring graft or a patella graft, and we're just wondering which is better, which is recommended.
Well, what has the surgeon recommended? I mean, a lot of that would it's very individual based on, the strength of those ligaments or tendons within the individual. What has been the recommendation you've received?
The latest one is patella. He's recommending patella. Now, she was playing competitive soccer, and he said if you wanted to get back to playing competitive sports, he's recommending patella.
Yeah.
My daughter also, I don't know, she's read up in, I guess, on the internet and stuff with the hamstring graft that there seems to be pain for a longer period of time in the knee.
Yeah, so I would say what you read on the internet doesn't matter as much as what the surgeon who's going to do the surgery would recommend. I would also agree that, so number one, the ACL prevents shear of the tibia, which is the lower bone, going forward on the top bone, the femur. Your hamstrings do that as well. So it's always worthwhile with soccer to have a very strong prevention of that shear. So I think if she did want to play soccer longer term, based on the very limited things that I know and just based on the opinion she's already had, I'd probably go with the patella as well. Just because I feel the hamstring is going to be much more important in her playing career in the future.
Oh, okay. But you haven't heard that there's pain associated with hamstring longer term?
Well, it makes sense, right? The hamstring is a muscle which has better blood supply. There's more pain sensation in that area. I don't know for sure. I have not heard that. I don't think that should be the basis of the decision, though. I think the basis of the decision should be really based on sort of thinking about the future of her activity in the sport she's doing, and then also understanding the surgeon obviously is taking into consideration her body, what's going on with her hamstring, her patella, all of those things, which I have not seen. So I've not heard anything about the pain stuff.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for your advice.
Problem.
Thank you, Ross, and best of luck to you and your daughter. See, it's amazing the elevation of occurrence, I guess. It seems natural when you're playing competitive or elite sports, but the counter to that is she will probably listen to whatever rehab and prehab advice is dished out to her before and after the surgery, because as we know, athletes, in the juxtaposition to people who don't take part in sports or much physical activity, are very diligent when it comes to literally getting back on their feet, right?
100%. It does make the job of the rehab specialist definitely much easier when they're dealing with athletes, because athletes are keen to want to get back. They're used to being active, and they're used to being active at a more high level than what rehab often is. And so they want to do it. In fact, one of the negatives with athletes is that sometimes they want to progress so fast that they end up going too fast and actually hurting their outcome. But in general, if you can sort of have that conversation and mitigate that, they do very, very well, just based on the very nature that they know how important keeping the body healthy is and doing the right exercises, and they're very highly motivated. So definitely, I mean, I always tell everybody should think like an athlete when it comes to taking care of their pain and injury. Just pretend and at the end of the day, it's really no different, because listen, if you're an athlete making money to play a sport, what really is the difference if you're an individual going to work every day and making money? Your body is part of that, right? Like, you need to have a healthy body. You need to be, you don't want to have a knee ache sitting at a desk that affects you, that, you can't be as productive as you would otherwise be, that makes you feel depressed, whatever it may be. There's really no difference. So we are all, to some extent, an urban type of athlete, and we should be dealing with our bodies the same way any athlete would.
All right, before we go here in a minute, give us some details just as how people can still reach you and how the clinics are, again, getting back into business, right? Yeah, so I encourage everybody to go to PinPointHealth.ca. You can see the list of things that we are doing. You can reach me or the clinics at 1-855-55-Dr. Lou, DRLOU, or send us an email. And that email can be a question, whatever it is, info@PinPointHealth.ca. And we will catch you next week. Thanks for joining us. Reach out indeed. Don't hesitate. It's the PinPoint Health Show, and we'll be back at it next Saturday on Global News Radio.
The preceding was a paid commercial program. Unless otherwise identified, the guests on the program are employees of the advertiser. Opinions expressed are those of the advertiser and do not necessarily reflect the views and policies of Global News Radio 640 Toronto.